Welcome to the Rust Belt Rundown, brought to you by Rust Belt Recruiting. This podcast is designed to shine a light on the meaningful work being done in Northeast Ohio and the surrounding region. We will convene manufacturing executives and Northeast Ohio business leaders for candid discussions about their business, regional happenings, industry trends, entrepreneurship, and more. Now, let's get running on the Rundown.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 23 of the Rust Belt Rundown. I am your host, Paul O'Connor, and on this episode, we are joined by Matthew Fieldman, Executive Director of America Works. America Works is a nationwide initiative to coordinate manufacturing workforce development efforts in the Manufacturing Extension Partnership National Network, which we are going to get to later. But Matthew, first, happy Friday. Thank you so much for being on.
Happy Friday. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. So first of all, go Gators. Tell us how you ended up in Gainesville and what made you want to study psychology during your undergraduate years.
Yeah. So I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and like Clevelanders go to Ohio State, Orlando kids go to University of Florida. And so it was the great state school, had a great time there. I thought I was going to be a social worker when I started college. I had gotten a chance to shadow some social workers and just loved what they did, loved the impact they had on people's lives, and wanted to study psychology. It was the most interesting subject. And once I graduated and got a chance to actually experience social work, I realized it was not for me. I did not want to pursue that. But at the time, psychology is super interesting, and it absolutely influences what I do every day. Having that background has been very helpful.
I got a feeling Florida State fans would disagree with you in terms of this is where everyone goes. I mean, Florida and Ohio are actually pretty similar, where there's a million options, right? But yes. I would agree that I would say overall, like when you think, Ohio is easy, like it's Ohio State, with maybe Cincinnati being like a distant second. But then there's the Kents and the Akrons and the OUs, where Florida's like, all right, it's Florida for sure.
I didn't want to say Florida State is. Florida State's our distant second.
What about Miami?
Miami's not a state school. They're a private school, so they're expensive.
Okay. Sure.
So they're a great school, but expensive. I don't even know what tuition is there these days. But even at the time, it was $25,000-$30,000 a year. But for us, Florida State is a distant second, and I don't want to say it, but I will. The smart kids go to UF.
I love it. There's nothing. I love trash talking colleges. I think it's very fun.
Sorry, Seminoles. Don't hate me.
Well, okay. Let's stay on the education track. So you ended up continuing, your education throughout different stages during your career. One including an MBA from George Washington and a certificate in nonprofit management from Case Western. What prompted you to get those additional degrees? Was it something where the current job you were holding asked you, or you saw where things were going? Like what prompted that?
Yeah, I saw where things were going. I fell into the nonprofit world, started doing fundraising, decided I really liked it, and saw that the people above me, the bosses and the people I aspired to be at early in my career, had MBAs. And I had the opportunity as well to work during the day and take my MBA at night at GW. And it just worked perfectly for a young single guy in DC to work during the day, take the metro down, take classes. I was dating my wife now at the time. So I just had, it just worked really well logistically. And I really enjoyed how I could learn at night and apply those learnings during the day in my job. And so that worked out really well. What I did not walk away with at the time was a network. And so some people go to MBA school full time and walk away with a really great network that they can tap into. I was really in it for the three letters, MBA. I wanted them behind my name. And sure enough, afterwards, I started making significantly more money and, certainly have had lots of doors open to me because of that graduate degree. Then when I moved to Cleveland, I wanted to continue diving deep into the nonprofit world. I saw that Case Western had a certificate in nonprofit management, which was only 5 classes. And I thought, wow, I can pick the 5 classes I want to dive deep into. I spent a lot of time on finance and the history of nonprofits I thought was super interesting. So I took the 5 classes and I got the certificate. And again, it's been very enriching. And I think, we all have to be lifelong learners as we transition and start talking about manufacturing. the robots, the computers, they're coming for all of our jobs. Someday podcasts will be hosted by computers talking to people. Someday, robots will write grants and do other things. So we all have to stay one step ahead. And so I think advancing your education, trying to figure out to skate where the puck is going is really important for everyone in any occupation.
What is your opinion on the current state 2021 status and ROI of an MBA? And would you recommend it to someone? Everyone is different. Everyone's at different stages of their career, but just overall high level, would you recommend someone getting an MBA right now?
It's tough to say. Again, it's very, very case by case basis. But what I would say is, if you can work while you learn, that's usually the best situation. The ability to keep building your resume, to keep building your skills, to apply what you're learning at night in your day job, those I think are really valuable. Taking 2 years out of the workforce to learn, it's a good thing for some people, but I think for me it was really helpful to be able to do both simultaneously and not have that work gap on my resume.
And so when you said you left GW without necessarily the network that you had wanted, what were the factors that contributed to that?
Oh yeah, when you're taking classes from 6 to 8 p.m. after a long day of work, you don't really want to hang out, afterwards. And it was again, that crowd tends to be older, and they have families and they have jobs tomorrow and that sort of thing. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to socialize after classes. And even when there was, I wasn't always interested. There were nights, certain semesters where I took class from 6 to 10 p.m. Because I was trying to get 2 classes in that semester. And so, you're just exhausted after a long day. So, I met a few people. I thought it was really interesting. Obviously GW has a really international student base, so it was fascinating to, meet some people from all over the world. I found myself doing a lot of the editing because while everybody was amazing and cool people, not everybody spoke English as a first language. So I found myself, quickly kind of signing up to be the editor of other people's research and really discovered that I loved writing and I loved putting together the research into a coherent story that a professor would enjoy reading. And so, definitely I got a chance to brush up on that skill set. But again, the MBA, obviously it's been almost 20 years now. So the degree has changed a lot. I just think there's a lot more specialization these days in master's programs. So if you know what you want to do, definitely look to specialize. The MBA is a great all-purpose degree because I didn't know whether I was going to stay in nonprofits or move into business. And in fact, I've done both since then, and it's been helpful. But if you know you want to stay in a certain career, there's now masters in philanthropy, there's masters in organizational behavior. So you can really go after exactly what you want these days.
Yeah, good transition. So you've generally worked in nonprofit settings, save for a short stint with Filedman. Tell us about your experience in nonprofits and how that has helped you in your current role at America Works.
Yeah, I had a really cool, diverse background of different nonprofits. I started in the Jewish community. I worked in international humanitarian aid. When the opportunity to work in economic development came up, I jumped at it back in 2015 to join Magnet. And so I spent about 20 years doing fundraising in different capacities and loved that it's the perfect mix of business and psychology. So there's the MBA plus the psychology degree. You have to sell, you have to hit your numbers, but at the same time, you have to understand people. Sometimes you have to understand organizations and foundations and how they work. And so I've really enjoyed raising money. Back in 2020, I saw the need for more coordination around the nation's advanced manufacturing training efforts. So right now, advanced manufacturing training happens at workforce development boards. It happens at community colleges, manufacturing extension partnerships like Magnet, where I work, Catalyst Connection, who you've interviewed in the past. We're all doing our own training, and it looks different in every community, but there's tremendous opportunity to share best practices, to share lessons learned, even just share curricula and marketing materials. With such limited resources in the nonprofit space and the education space, we don't have time to spend, developing things, recreating the wheel. And so I applied for a grant from NIST MEP to create America Works, which is the connective tissue for all 50 states and Puerto Rico to offer and share their best practices, to learn from each other, to deepen their local impact on workforce, and to generally connect and create a sense of community, because we're all in this together. Training youth in many ways is training youth no matter where you are in the country. Doing Industry 4.0 supervisor training, teaching C-level executives what the 9 Industry 4.0 technologies are and how to best use them. Again, that's pretty applicable anywhere you are in the country. And so I'm excited to kind of create that foundation that allows workforce practitioners to be more effective. When they're going into a company, whether it's in Hawaii or Alaska or Texas or wherever, they should have all the tools, all the latest knowledge, all the latest skills. And so that's what I'm trying to provide through America Works is, hey, look at this great program from Pennsylvania. That's working really well. Here's South Dakota's Industry 4.0 training program. It's the best in the country. Why don't you take that with you? So give someone all the tools they need to be as effective as possible when they're talking to a company's leadership.
Okay, so you started working at Magnet almost 7 years ago. Two-part question. Want to learn a little bit about your roles because they've changed in the last 7 years. And then the flyover of how does America Works work, right? Like how is it developed within the Magnet ecosystem?
That's great. So I started in January of 2015 at Magnet as the Vice President of External Affairs. And that at the time was a huge portfolio. It was marketing and events and media relations and government relations and fundraising. It was a little bit too much for one person. So we were able to hire a staff and bring some people on board. And I naturally gravitated towards what I was good at, which was fundraising. And so eventually we broke the marketing piece out and let me do the fundraising. And I also picked up some really fun individual kind of initiatives that where I had an idea and kind of recruited a team and we did some really cool things. So the M-Spire competition was based on something I saw out of Detroit, where entrepreneurs pitch their ideas and everyone wins. Everyone gets matched with either good advice or a grant or assistance. So we started the M-Spire competition, which is still in effect till today. We started a statewide manufacturing survey, which again has been very, very helpful towards guiding the state's economic development efforts as it relates to manufacturing. And then I was able to raise a lot of money for Magnet and help grow our team and grow our impact here in Northeast Ohio. We covered the 20 counties of Northeast Ohio. And so as my role grew and developed, as I mentioned, I saw this need for the workforce piece. I went to our CEO, Ethan Karp, and said, look, if we get this grant, can I do this work? Can I transition out of fundraising for a few years and see about doing this workforce, focusing deep in workforce? And he said, yeah, go for it. Actually, one of the really interesting seeds for this was when I walked in January 2015, on my desk was a white paper on how to adapt the German apprenticeship model to the Northeast Ohio educational ecosystem. So how do you take the best of what Germany is offering in youth apprenticeships and bring it to Cleveland? And so I went to some friends in this education space and got some opinions. We went to some CEOs and got their buy-in, and we went to some high schools and got their buy-in. And I went to NIST MEP and said, hey, someone must have done this previously because we're recreating the wheel. There must be someone out there who's doing youth apprenticeships. And the powers that be at MEP said, basically, we don't know who's doing what in this space. And it definitely planted the seed of, why don't we have more connective tissue going on and more best practices and even a database around who's doing what in workforce across the nation. So that is how my role evolved. I've been doing America Works for about a year. And like I said, it's a grant to Magnet to create this program for the national network. And the program is 7 different things, which is I think really cool. So it started with that national survey. Who's doing what currently, and where do MEPs want to go with their workforce efforts? Do they want to get into training reentry? Do they want to do more with people with special needs? Do they want to do more around Industry 4.0? So really getting all the data out of the MEPs for each state and region in our country. Then I turned that into a searchable database on MVP University. It's this really cool interactive database where you can click on the population and see who's doing what and get and who's willing to share the best practices in that area. So it's basically Google for workforce in the MEP system. You click, you get the person's contact info, you can reach out and say, hey, we're thinking about doing the same thing. Can you tell me about what you did? And basically save me time and effort and making mistakes in that area. Then we do bi-monthly best practice webinars, everything on leadership to partnering with different organizations to how do you fundraise better, just all the different best practices that are out there in our network. We have a lot in terms of annual conferences and getting people together. We also have discussion nodes where it's not a formal presentation. It's just people interested in a specific topic coming together and talking about it. So, for example, adult apprenticeships is a big area. There's a lot of money going into it. There's a lot of MEPs that are very active in it. So getting everyone together and saying, where are you and what do you want to share? Where do you want to go? Just allowing MEP professionals from around the country to connect and share together. One of my favorite parts is the external partner outreach. So talking to other organizations that play in the manufacturing training space and manufacturing workforce development space and saying, what is your expertise? How can we partner? How can we inject your expertise into the MEP network so we can have the maximum impact? And that's been very fun and interesting and effective. Everything from technology companies bringing their technologies to nonprofits that provide training. You name it, they're out there. For example, we created a partnership with Women in Manufacturing, a national nonprofit that supports and engages women in manufacturing careers. And this was just an important thing that is really critical to the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of manufacturing nationally. And then finally, I have micro grants to help fund and support innovative workforce strategies. So an MEP can come to me and say, hey, we have this great new partnership. We just need some basic funding to get it off the ground. We really want to try it. And I can give up to $10,000 to an MEP to help launch something new. And really the point is to create new and scalable and replicable strategies that could impact the country. So right now we've got pilots going for training people with special needs for CNC jobs, training formerly incarcerated people for entry-level manufacturing jobs, using virtual reality to inspire high school students to pursue manufacturing careers, and just a wide variety of different things going on. So that's maybe the most exciting piece, is the ability to say, we can take an idea and turn it into a real program on the ground.
Whew, okay, so a lot to break down. I think the thing that stayed with me the most is seeing that there was a lack of, and you said connective tissue, right? And trying to create a platform where people can come and find out best practices, right? I could imagine that nonprofits overall probably need that help anyway, no matter what they're working on, right? Like, yes, in the manufacturing space, but this could be in the youth development space, in the housing space, whatever. I wonder if that exists, number one, and number two, if they could take what you did and replicate it across all industries.
It certainly does in certain industries and certain areas. Community colleges have their own networks, universities have their own networks. So there's a lot of connective tissue. I just saw the vacuum within the MEP system, but I do think that manufacturing is really lucky and privileged to have a federally sponsored organization like the MEP network devoted to growing that particular industry. And I wonder if technology had something similar, if the culinary industry and restaurants had something similar, hospitality. As far as I know, they don't. Actually, the MEP is based on the Agricultural Extension Partnership, which was around long before MEPs came around. But the idea of supporting farmers became a federal program. And obviously that's been very successful. So the MEP was kind of based on it. But other industries have not yet had that kind of direct support, especially for the small and medium-sized companies in that industry, where a lot of the jobs are and a lot of the growth is. And so, manufacturing is very lucky to be in this space, and I'm very lucky to work in it.
So you have served on the board of Edwins, including being the founding board president. How did you get to know Brandon and become involved in his mission, which, he's been on the podcast and he's just doing amazing work?
Brandon is absolutely amazing. And my friendship with him and the roller coaster that has been Edwins has been amazing. So I met Brandon on a football field in the summer of 2010. We were on the same football team, and I just knew him as this lanky guy who could catch a pass. That was all I knew about him, and his name was Brandon. But then I bumped into him at La Albatross, where he was working, and we started talking, and I said, I am a fundraiser in nonprofits, and he shared with me his dream of creating a restaurant for formerly incarcerated people to learn careers in fine dining. And as he will share anytime, he was formerly incarcerated. A restaurant saved his life, gave him a fresh start, and he wanted to offer that same opportunity to others. And I thought that was a great idea. I love the idea of social enterprise, where fundraising and earned revenue go hand in hand, and you create a business that does good. And I just loved the idea. So we started a board. I became the founding board president. We raised about $400,000 over a 6-month period in 2013. And we opened in November of 2013. I served as the board president until my third child was born in July of 2016. At that point, I was like, I have a lot on my plate. Let's hand this off. But I've served on the board ever since, and have very much enjoyed the growth of the organization. It's now multiple businesses, multiple housing opportunities for people. And it was my first real deep dive into what does a successful social enterprise look like. And I got really inspired, and I wanted to do more. And so it's definitely helped shape how I see the nonprofit industry and where things can go. And the potential for creating social enterprises is tremendous.
So, yeah, perfect transition into another organization that you founded. So back in 2015, you found an organization called Cleveland Codes, which is devoted to teaching low-income adults software development and tools. So how did this come about? What was the motivation to starting it?
Absolutely. So at the time, between 2012 and 2014, I was working at Fathom, which is a digital marketing company. And my clients were businesses of all sizes, where we were doing pay-per-click and search engine optimization and email marketing. We did all sorts of digital marketing for our clients. But I kept losing business because my clients would come to me and say, we love what you're doing. Can you build our website? And I would have to say no. And I went to our HR person and said, can't we hire some more coders so that we can build websites? Because there's a lot of potential business out there for this. And she said, no, there are no coders in Cleveland. There are not enough. And the ones that are out there are charging enormous salaries, and we just can't do it. And I thought to myself, I've seen how you can train low-income adults for high skill, high wage careers from Edwin's. And I thought I'd seen the growth of the coding bootcamp movement nationally, and said, this is great. These 3-month, 4-month boot camps are doing really amazing work, but they run $15,000 to $20,000 per person for this 3-month education, which is obviously only accessible to people with money. And I thought, well, what if we could train people using that same boot camp method, but either the companies would pay it back, or maybe the government would pay for it. Someone would pay for this training, and then obviously we could make these careers more accessible and probably find some great talent out there. And that's exactly what happened. So I shopped the idea around, found some partners, and I always like to start with the end in mind. So the end was always that I would find a educational partner to teach this, because I'm not a coder. And the idea was, let's figure out who's going to own this, and how can we create a boot camp here in Cleveland for low-income adults to learn careers in technology. And sure enough, that partner was out there. She was at Cuyahoga Community College. Monique Humphrey was thinking about the same thing, but didn't have a lot of connections. I brought the connections and kind of the vision, and together we partnered and created it. So it started in early 2016 with our first class. We've trained now over 200 people with a 50-60% placement rate in high-tech careers. And so this is working out really well. You're seeing people go from $7 an hour to $20 an hour as a coder. Just launching new and successful careers in technology. And sure enough, I think this model works really well for workforce development, and has certainly inspired me. But it's basically 3 things go into a successful workforce development program. You need job openings in a high wage career. You have to help people have a vision for themselves. It's easy in culinary because people know what chefs look like and what chefs do. It's a little harder in coding because you don't usually see coders, but you can take people to site visits and get them excited. even harder in manufacturing, where people just don't know what a CNC machinist is. They don't know what an industrial maintenance technician does. So, but if you can get them that vision of themselves in that career and get them excited about that, then you can give them the skills, which is, frankly, in some cases, the easiest part, because you just teach until they get it, and some people really have a knack for it. And then finally, you have to give them support along the way. You have to take care of the needs that they have outside of the educational curriculum. So it's really interesting. The first thing we learned at Edwin's was our students were having a really tough time getting to and from the restaurant. They were not showing up. And no-shows were very expensive, because if someone didn't show, we'd have to pay someone hourly to fill that spot. And we quickly realized that there was a business case to be made for hiring a case manager. And so that's exactly what we did. Someone to come in and say, basically, to every employee, what challenges are you facing outside of Edwin's? And let me help you deal with those. Whether that's childcare or transportation or alimony or whatever it might be, let's figure it out and let's address it together. And our Heather has been amazing in terms of student retention at Edwin's, and we did that at Cleveland Codes, and we do that in magnet programs as well. But right off the bat, you have to very quickly identify what challenges the person has and help them address it. And then because of that support, because of those skills, because the person's bought in and sees themselves as a coder or CNC operator or whatever it is, you can create a really great recipe for success in these training programs.
Now, do they have to have any background in coding, or they can just be fresh, want to learn?
None whatsoever. They do have to pass an aptitude test. And that is simply to make sure that they have the right kind of mindset. And this is really important because if you're really gregarious, if you're really extroverted, chances are a coding career is going to be tougher for you. And so we do an aptitude test to get a sense of how do you think? Can you think in a linear fashion? Can you do some basic math problems? Those sort of things. So not everybody passes the aptitude test, and that's good. They can go find careers in other things. But the ones who do are often, they think in the right way. They have the right building blocks for a really strong career in technology. And so that aptitude test does a really good job of putting people on the right path and letting them know whether this is the right path for them or not.
Okay, so this past year and a half or so has been a reckoning for a lot of people across the country within the social justice movements that we've seen, right? Tell us about your work with Rekindle, an organization that you co-founded, and it brings Cleveland's Black and Jewish communities together, right, to help accelerate social justice movement. So how did that come about, and kind of what is how does the program work?
That's great. So it came about because I was bothered by something I saw in Cleveland as I was doing this work. So, growing up in Orlando, I grew up in a really nice, tight-knit Jewish community, came to Cleveland, which is also incredibly supportive, just an amazing Jewish community, and I've really loved it here. But what bothered me is when I was working on Edwin's, when I was working on Cleveland Codes, when I've been working here at Magnet, my Jewish friends don't know my Black friends. And in many cases, they're working on similar programs, but they're working in parallel. So I saw this during the elections with voter registration. I've seen this with criminal justice reform. I've seen all sorts of different efforts that are not, where the two communities are not working together. And that's partly because geographically they're separated, partly because, we're fighting against hundreds of years of oppression and segregation and whatnot. And so I thought, this isn't going to change unless we actively create a bridge between the two communities and actively create a platform for people to meet, connect, understand each other, and ideally take action together. And that's really the critical piece. Is I wanted to create that dialogue, but I really wanted to lead to partnerships and collaborations that didn't exist previously. So I was able to find, through my wife actually, a wonderful person named Charmaine Rice, and she is incredibly helpful. She's a trained DEI facilitator, and together we co-founded Rekindle. And so the fellows, half Black, usually Christian, half white and Jewish, come together and talk about where we share values, where we share leadership skills, the attributes of our community, the strengths of our communities, and how we can partner moving forward. And so we graduated our first cohort back in June. Our second cohort will graduate in November, and we'll do 2 more cohorts in 2022. Then we'll reevaluate and see how it's going. But we think that if we can get 50, 60 people to go through this together and have this really transformative experience, we can actually create a cohort of leaders that really does come together, collaborates, and really advances social justice here in Cleveland, and ideally creates a national model that other communities could use as well. And this is based on the idea, the name Rekindle comes from the idea that in the 60s, the Jewish community was very active in the civil rights movement. And you can point to a lot of different leaders who really sacrificed a lot and put themselves on the line to advance the cause of civil rights. And that fight is not over. I think many young white kids are taught that we've succeeded. Civil rights is here. We've done our part. As a Jewish young adult, I was taught we did our part and we're good. We can wash our hands and move on to the next thing. And that's really not true. And I'm excited to reevaluate where we are and really rekindle those relationships that the Jewish community had with the Black community and invest in them. And hopefully they'll develop real fruits of our labor moving forward.
I mean, you mentioned 2 things that are super important: dialogue and then action. I mean, dialogue's half the battle, right? Especially in a time where we've never been more divided and people can't even have conversations about things that they disagree with. So that's super important. And I guess my question would be, with the action, was it do you have specific things that you're like, is it voting rights? Is it what are the different action plans that you guys are working on?
So as the convener, I don't have an opinion on what the fellows should do together. That's for them to decide. Part of what we do is we talk about where our passions are and where our skill sets are. We do something called the Working Genius Assessment, which is the newest thing from Pat Lencioni, if you like his 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, or the Ideal Team Player. So many good Pat Lencioni books. Right, exactly. He's amazing. And so his latest thing is the Working Genius Assessment, which I absolutely love. So all the fellows take it, and it allows them to create a team based on everyone's strengths. And so that's what we're working on, creating these action teams. And they'll tell me where their passions are, and we'll match make based on that. So what we've seen actually is some social gatherings, because people just want to create more social bonds. I'm hoping, as well, we take on bigger issues as well. But that's for them to decide. And I'm looking forward to them telling me, and ideally we can even connect different cohorts together. And so we're actually having a party at my house in November where the 2 different cohorts are going to come and mingle, and hopefully good things will come out of it. So everyone's at the table because they know action is required. It's one of the commitments of being a fellow, and I hope that they take it seriously and do good things as a result. Because I've been really fortunate to be in a situation where I could be a part of starting Edwin's, be a part of starting Cleveland Codes. I'd like other people to be put in that situation. I think I can do that for others, to create a platform for them to launch their own ventures.
Love it. That's awesome. All right. Well, Matthew, this was great. We'll get you out of here on this one. The running joke on this podcast is sometimes this is the hardest question we actually answer. But favorite dining spots in the greater Cleveland area? Can be sit down, can be takeout, can be a new COVID favorite, whatever you want.
Oh, excellent. Well, when I'm not at Edwin's, and I gotta say, the right in front of the fireplace at Edwin's is my favorite spot in Cleveland on a winter night with a glass of wine and a dessert and my wife, and we're very happy there. But on the west side, Root Cafe, whenever I can make it over there, I absolutely love it. On the east side, really any of the Indian places make me happy. And so you name it, I'm there. And also Melt, when I can work out and actually justify eating a 2,500 calorie meal. I love Melt, and it definitely, just drizzle cheese on something and I'm happy. So those are my spots.
I think that's the most of us, right? Drizzle cheese and we'll make it work. Where can everybody find you, learn more about you, whether it's LinkedIn or social or the website, all that good stuff?
All of that is good. Matthew Fieldman on LinkedIn, mattfieldman@gmail.com if you want to send me an email, rekindlefellowship.org if you want to learn about Rekindle, clevelandcodes.org if you want to learn about Cleveland Codes, edwinsrestaurant.org if you want to learn about Edwin's, manufacturingsuccess.org if you want to learn about Magnet. America Works has a page. It's actually an intranet page, so it's tough to find. But any one of those will be really good. And people should absolutely reach out to me. Let me know what you're interested in, and I love to offer advice and guidance and connections and whatever I can do to help.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. Enjoy lunch with Taylor and the weekend, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Rust Belt Rundown. Make sure you check us out at rustbeltrecruiting.com. The Rust Belt Rundown is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and click on 5 stars if you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.